Commentary Booth is a show for media lovers by media lovers just like you. If you want to support the show, go to pariomagazine.com.au. And then the second thing we watched was a recommendation from you, the new Apple TV Plus drama mini-series based on true events, WeCrashed. How did you come across this one?
It's just one of those things that Apple TV Plus were really pushing. And then I think really what got us across the line to start it, because I'd never even really heard of the brand or the company WeWork, which is what WeCrashed is based on. But having Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway play the two lead roles, particularly Anne Hathaway, really pushed us across the line to give it a go. And then once we started to watch it, it's an 8-part miniseries. And once we started to kind of get into the story of something that we'd never really heard of, and how it kind of rose to power and crashed at the end, I guess, it really sucked us in.
Oh yeah, like it's another one of those Apple shows where you hit play thinking, oh, I'll watch one episode and see what this is like, and then the next thing you know, you've watched 3 episodes and it's midnight and you're like, oh well, I probably should go to bed. But I want to keep watching more. Like, so compelling. I was glad I waited till the entire season was out.
Yeah. I think for me, the storyline, and for people that don't know what happened, it follows, so Jared Leto plays a man called Adam Newman, who is a desperate entrepreneur that's trying to come up with a bunch of ideas. I think he had knee pads for babies and a bunch of other random stuff, high heels that fold down that ended up stabbing a lady in the foot. And it follows him and the love story that he ended up having with Rebecca Paltrow, which is actually in real life Gwyneth Paltrow's cousin. And how he is just desperate to prove to her that he is going to come up with some great idea, and the confidence that he has to really stick with it and bring about this startup company that is basically just an office space sharing company. And I think at the height of its existence, he went from having absolutely nothing and a bunch of knee pads for babies boxes that he never sold to a company valued, to be fair, I think he valued it, but valued at $47 billion.
Yeah, like it was ridiculous. I knew the concept of WeWork. I can't remember if I heard the name, but I knew the idea of shared co-working spaces like this. And yeah, he just builds this company out of nothing, just keeps going after investor after investor after investor, gets it up to $47 billion, which just seems exorbitant. And yeah, just chases money so that he can, like, I think, what did he get, like 8 million at the start, and then got a bit more, and then thought, okay, we've built this one location, and he just kept going after more money to like expand super quickly without sort of establishing the brand. Like, he just wanted to be an overnight success essentially. Just, if we expand super quick, eventually we take over the market and we just win that way. And it's kind of like, it's not exactly how it works. And they keep referencing Facebook and Amazon as like their inspirations and models for how to do business. And it's like, yeah, Facebook made no money for years. Amazon lost money for decades. Netflix did the same. Like, they lost money for years and years before they eventually made any money. And he kind of was just following that same model of spend $2 million a day to expand, buy locations and rent locations, and pay double whatever it costs to rent these locations or do construction, because once we get it all built, then we don't have to spend any more money and we just win that way. And I was like, not exactly, and it obviously bit them in the butt at the end.
Well, it did, but I mean, they say we crashed, and I think before I get into the end part of it, I think just to go back to the storyline that they have with it, I think the love story really sucked me in between the two of them, and the way that confidence that people, even like when you're talking about the Amazons and the Facebooks, and that confidence that they have to keep rolling with it and believe in themselves. And I think that's the thing that breaks those sorts of people apart from the rest of us in the world, that given the little hurdles, I know me for a person, I'd be like, okay, well, this isn't working. I'll just go back to being a teacher or whatever might happen. But they face these hurdles and they're in such a belief of what they want and their idea that they have that they stick with it. And I think for him to have Rebecca, who he ended up marrying, stick with him through that and following her story of how hard it is to stick with somebody through that. I mean, I think they ended up getting a wedding present, which was to buy a house. He took the entire funding that he was supposed to buy a house with and pumped it straight into the business, which at the time is just insane. But in the end, works out so much better for them. So I think that story is what really kept it going. But then it gets to the point where you never really think about how hard it is to run a successful business, just in terms of not letting the money go to your head, because obviously they're riding around in helicopters and thinking that they're all these wonderful people.
Private
but
jets.
Even just the little slip ups that they have, like where Rebecca accidentally says that she thinks her position is to help him.
Mm-hmm.
And then that becomes a gender role issue and how they have to try and recover from that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of little intricacies and a few complexities there that keep the story a bit more entertaining than just the concept of they made a business, it was good, it sucked, the end. I think they really did a good job of following that. I think my only criticism, I think Anne Hathaway was brilliant in that. She did a good job of playing that character and the highs and lows that it had. My only issue with Jared Leto was I think he overdoes the Israeli accent a little bit. And I think he sounds a bit like Gru out of Despicable Me at times. And I had a hard time sticking with it.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think it was quite good. And it gets to the end and you kind of think, well, we crashed, but it sucked me in. I don't know if the same thing happened to you, but I ended up looking up how much is he still worth. Did you look up how much he's still worth?
Yep. Yeah, he's still worth over
$2.5 billion.
Yeah, he's still worth heaps.
I mean, that's not, he crashed, but I mean, if I crash and I land at 2.5 billion, I'm not too unhappy.
Yeah, that's very true. Having just watched Jared Leto in Morbius, this is a much better performance despite the over-accentuated accent at times. But it kind of just, the show highlighted to me the major flaw in him as an actor. Like when he gets a character like this where he can really sink his teeth into and he puts all of his effort behind the character, it's so much better and more compelling to watch. Whereas when it was something like Morbius, which was just standard comic fare, he kind of just, it feels kind of like he half-asses it and it just doesn't work. Like it just feels crap. Whereas this one felt really good. Anne Hathaway felt really good. Like you mentioned, there's times where you're rooting for the couple and then you sort of start to see maybe Adam Newman is kind of just a scam artist.
Yeah.
Despite all of the confidence that he has, like, I'm going to make this work.
Sociopathic.
And the charisma that he has, like he can sell he could bloody sell ice to Eskimos at this point. And he manages to get all these people to invest billions of dollars with no real like financial backing or plan. Like he kind of just wings everything and like just betting on black, and it just keeps coming up black, coming up black, coming up black. And then one time it hits red and he's like, oh, what do I do?
It goes to show you how far confidence can get people in life. And I think it does a good job of that.
Yep. I did laugh though when it gets to a point where they're showing how much the business is losing, and it's just like up and down. $1.5 million a day, 1.2, 1.8, 2.1 million a day. You're like, how are you spending $2 million a day? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Insanity.
Just as a concept, it's still obviously, we drove past the other day and I saw a couple of office sharing spaces and things that are still going. And when I looked at it, I think it was still something like 45 million square feet of office space is still owned and used by WeWork. So, I mean, obviously as a business, it's still operating and running. So, yeah, it must be hard though. Like you do feel for him when it gets taken away from him at the end of the story, and to have your child taken away by a board of, I guess, executives that you've put in there to help you run it, and then they kick you out, must just be absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah, and that last episode where they're just like, him and the major investor SoftBank are kind of just having a standoff over the figure when they're throwing out these massive payout figures, and he's just like, nah, and just hangs up the phone. And even Rebecca's like, what do we do if they don't ring back? And he's just so confident, like, he'll ring back. They'll make another offer. It's like, gee, I don't know if I could have turned down, what was it, like $5 billion or something? Like, what are you doing? I did find it crazy that with the way his business strategy was, they just got to a point where they were so bloated with expenses that they couldn't even afford to fire people because the severance packages would have been too high that they couldn't have covered the severance. And it's like, ooh, we're not in a good spot when we can't even afford to fire people.
Yeah.
And yeah, when they went public, valuation $47 billion. It dropped to $10 billion. All the employees that had share options just essentially got nothing. So they did all this work for low pay or no pay with share options as their payment. And then the share options ended up being worth less than the paper they were written on. And then I looked up, yeah, WeWork still exists. It eventually went public in October last year at a valuation of $9 million, which was $9 billion, $38 million less than its peak. Like, big drop. And then Adam's payout in that final episode, also ridiculous. They paid him out $1.7 billion, which was split as $970 million for his remaining shares, a $185 million consulting fee, $500 million to repay all of his personal loans that he'd taken out against his shares, and then he's currently still on a $46 million annual consultancy salary.
Must be tough.
What a tough life. Just getting paid $46 million to stay away.
You can pay me less and I'll do that.
You could pay me, yeah, 1/46 of that and I'll stay away from any company you want me to. But yeah, like we said, this is another one of those shows where Apple TV prove that they produce high quality content that you just can't stop watching. Like last week, I spoke to Blake about Severance, which is again the same thing where I was glad I waited until the full season was out, because once I hit play, every episode I was like, oh, I need to watch the next one. I need to watch the next one. Like I just couldn't stop watching. And after you told me to watch this, I think I powered through the entire season in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. I mean, if that's the worst problem that you're having with the streaming service is that you're like, oh, I'm going to have to wait for it all to come out because I just want to binge watch it. Like that is not a problem that I have with, to be fair, like Netflix is copying it a lot at the moment, but that is definitely not a problem I have with a bunch of Netflix content. Usually the problem is that I start it and can't stick with it because I just don't value it and I don't feel like it's worth my time. So this is, like you're right. It's another really well-produced, well-cast, well-acted series. And I think I almost hope that they could do a few more of these. Like it's a kind of a new category of a mini series for me, I guess, where you don't really see many business-based stories following startups that you can get into the characters and that. I wouldn't mind watching more rather than, I guess, the last time we talked about sort of crime docuseries and crime miniseries. I wouldn't mind seeing more business-based miniseries, seeing people's rises and falls.
Yeah, like sometimes truth is better than fiction. Like this was such a compelling story, even though you knew, like, WeCrashed, like, I get it's a really compelling, catchy title, but it does kind of give away the ending. But even though you know where it's going to go to, you still have to watch just to find out how the heck did we get to this point where a $47 billion company is now essentially worthless.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, the love story and the other parts to it, I think it gives you a lot more insight into the story rather than just the complete business element. So yeah, definitely a recommend for me. I liked it.
Yeah, it was a great pick. Good choice. I did laugh that at the start when he's like trying to work out what business he's going to do as this serial entrepreneur that he keeps calling himself. His first idea is like co-living spaces. now that
Yeah, it's like a
he's
small community.
now that he's been kicked out of WeWork, apparently that's what he's doing now. He's
He's got the
made a
money.
company where he's going to make a co-living space. I'm like, the way it was described at the start of this show, no, I don't want to clean a public bathroom.
Yeah. Look, you don't know though. That's the thing. It's wild to think, and that's what really captures my imagination with this story, and captures my imagination in that category, is that it's just people that had good ideas, and then they just, like the people for Uber. Everybody has a car. Why don't we just share the cars? Like, why don't we think of that? Well, Airbnb. Everybody has a house. Why don't we just share the house? Why didn't I think of that? Like, it's
if
just
if
so
I'm
much
going on
stuff,
holiday,
like,
I might as well have someone pay to use my house, and then that can pay for my
100%. Like,
holiday.
yeah, and it's nicer. And I think this part now that I think we're getting to in life, where I guess there's a bit more transparency to people, and you can trust people, and you get these cool business ideas that are review based, so you know that you can't kind of just get stitched up. Yeah, it's exciting to see what people come up with, and it's exciting to see series based around what they come up with.
Yeah, like a co-working space, it does seem so like ridiculous when it was first sort of posed. I was like, why would anyone want to just pay to go and use a desk? But then, yeah, they talk about how like there's those collaboration opportunities, and the community aspect really takes it to that whole new level. The parties and stuff they had were pretty insane. Like,
Yeah.
I read that the WeWork as it is now, they finally phased out free beer at all the locations.
Dude, I'm out.
And you know the scene where the beer tap gets left on in the show?
Yeah.
Apparently that was based on an actual event that happened at one of the locations when somebody that was at the WeWork facility broke one of the beer taps and just didn't tell anyone, and it leaked overnight and eventually flooded the workspace below it. It's like, what are you doing? Like, tell someone you broke the beer tap.
Yeah.
Tell me, and I'll turn it off.
There's probably a good reason people don't get drunk at work. Like, you don't want to have the sex cupboard. Like, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, it was. It was a good like highlight of good business practices and bad business practices. Like,
Yeah.
you don't want a sex closet. Maybe you don't need a free beer, foosball table, pool table, the Harlem Shake every day.
Yeah.
That he just walks out of meetings to get involved in.
Yeah, like I said, really liked it, and another Apple TV series that was worth your time.
Yeah, I think Apple TV now, my go-to is just wait for the series, because the way they've been going, I don't want to start one, watch 2 episodes, and like, oh well, now I gotta wait a week. So frustrating.
Yeah.
All right, what is your top recommendation for the week?
Look, I know it's not part of our bigger podcast. If you're a Downton fan, you've got to see Downton: A New Era. It was well worth the trip to Sydney just to get an early viewing of that. But
so it wasn't the cupcakes that sold you on that one?
No, I was sold well after the cupcakes. You know what? I think both of them are really good this time. It's hard to put a line between them. I think just for ease of viewing, and because the whole series is already out, like you said, I'm going to stick with WeWork, just because you don't have to go down to the movies. But if you do get an opportunity to go to the movies and see Northman, go for it.
Yeah, see, so this is where we differ. You're saying watch WeWork because it's easy, you don't have to leave the house. I'm saying go and see Northman at the cinema while you still can, because WeWork's going to be there forever, essentially. I don't see Apple TV disappearing anytime soon, or them randomly pulling this off the service. So go and see Northman while it's still in the cinema, and then after you've done that, then you can trickle through WeWork at home.
What happens when you're a tired teacher and you can't get off the couch?
Well, you can go to the movies next week during your strike.
I'm on strike. I'm striking. Let's not get political. Go to the movies.
Yep. Alrighty. Thank you everyone for listening to the commentary booth. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on podcast services and on YouTube. You can follow me on social media at JamMeUpsMedia and at Pario Magazine. And you can follow Buddy on Instagram at a.b_CSEE. The Commentary Booth is a fan-funded production of Jamie Apps Media. You can support the podcast alongside our magazine, Pario Magazine, on Patreon at patreon.com/JamieAppsMedia. The following people supported at the community support group level or higher, and you cannot fathom how incredibly appreciative we are for their support. Brian and June Hart, Blake Robinson, Rena Renee, Courtney Paulson, Darren Hatcliffe, Jackson Carr, and Tracy Apps.